In Matthew 27:46, we have a record of a fourth time that Jesus speaks from the cross when he says, my God, why have you forsaken me?" And when we initially hear that, it sounds like just an outburst from Jesus that we would understand very much under the circumstances. But really, there's much more here than an outburst because of the pain and the agony that he's going through. My God, why have you forsaken me?" is actually a direct quotation from the first verse of the 22nd Psalm. In fact, that entire psalm has a lot of prophecy in it and a lot that foreshadows and foretells the life of Jesus, and particularly events revolving the crucifixion and his death. It's a significant messianic psalm. And there are some who have said that perhaps not only did Jesus quote that first verse as we know it in our Bibles, but maybe he was actually quoting the entire psalm while he was hanging there on the cross. But we know for sure that he said this as a reminder, perhaps, to those people who were there, that this was a verse, this was a passage in their law that was foreshadowing and foretelling what was happening at that very moment. And hopefully they would eventually be able to put that together, even if they didn't see it at that very moment. But yet we also hear the agony in what Jesus says. And we also hear that Jesus is in great distress and he's suffering. And he cries out these words that I guess to a large degree we would say are very natural and perhaps very expected under such circumstances. And maybe we really kind of key in on the word why. That Jesus here says, my God, why have you forsaken me?" There are times when you and I go through great challenges to our faith, when we're undergoing great agonies, when we're bearing our crosses, not obviously to the degree that Jesus bore his, but we're bearing our crosses and things just seem so drear and so hopeless. And we call out why. And when we do that, sometimes we may think that we are less of a Christian than we ought to be because we've questioned God and we've said why. And maybe we think our faith is less than it ought to be, and it ought to be stronger, and we ought to be better. Just remember that when you and I say why, it doesn't necessarily mean at all that our faith is weak, or that our faith is bad or defective, or that we're less than a Christian than we ought to be. In fact, when we say that, we find ourselves in very good company.